Dear Harstem, Phoenix Colossus Carrier is an unbeatable unit composition. Terran versus Protoss is not my favorite matchup at a 38% win rate, but even I know that the reason is because my mechanics, macro and game knowledge are not good. However, in this game I had a playable but suboptimal late game setup because of my poor mid game. Despite that, I made some good plays and killed a ton of probes with nukes. I saw my opponent building Mass Phoenix, Carrier and Colossus, so I thought to myself that making a ton of Vikings and a few goes with my Bile Ball was the correct decision. I went up to 3 starports and maxed out with a ton of Vikings. I saw my opponent's army clumped up and rapid fire EMP'd a ton of his army and thought, now I go in for the kill, only to realize that the Terran cannot defeat Mass Phoenix. All my Vikings and Ghost and Bio died and the game was over. Tell me, dear Harstem, how is Terran supposed to defeat the undefeatable Protoss composition which counters air and ground? Is it Imba or do I suck? And this was sent in by Teardrop, a North American Grandmaster Terran player at 4,785 MMR with the simple question whether that undefeatable Protoss composition is imbalanced or if he sucks. So let's figure it out. Now, before we truly get into this game, we have to investigate the claim whether this guy is truly a Grandmaster. And yes, he has the Grandmaster border, of course, I checked. But his MMR is relatively low. And a lot of people will look at someone with 4,785 MMR and say, oh, you're a fake Grandmaster. Because the reason why he's a Grandmaster is in the new season, in order to qualify for a Grandmaster spot, you need to have played and won a certain amount of games. I think it's 30 games over the past 3 weeks. A lot of players don't have that on their account. So despite them having higher MMR than Teardrop, they are not in Grandmaster because they don't meet the other requirements. So a lot of people go like, 4,785 MMR, you're not a real GM. These people are what we know as dicks. Often jealous. They're just overall pricks. If someone reaches Grandmaster, they are a Grandmaster. Whatever the requirements are at that moment doesn't really matter. If they get the Grandmaster border, they're a Grandmaster and it counts. And if you think different, you're wrong. You can say, well, he's not 5k MMR, and that's true. Yes, he was Grandmaster, but not 5k MMR, which is why usually when talking about skill level, it's much more useful to talk about MMR rather than actual leagues, because the boundaries of the leagues change over time. And at the start of the season, it's often easier to get higher leagues. So, which is why I prefer talking about MMR. But saying that they're not Grandmaster is incorrect. This guy is not a fake GM. And people that call him, oh, fake GM, you're a prick. It's as easy as that. All right. Enough about that. We have Teardrop here who says he struggles with a particular composition. I think he mentioned the Phoenix, the Carrier. I think there might be some Colossus in there as well. So I'm looking forward to this. Now, Phoenix, Carrier, Colossus is a very powerful composition that requires a particular response out of the Terran player. And it requires what I like to call a chrono boosted response in which you skip a couple of steps. And this is difficult to comprehend for the Terran mind. Terran is the race kind of by default for true people. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I say that because I'm brain dead. As a Terran, you don't really ever have to think. The game strategically kind of plays itself. You start with Marines, then you get Marauders, you get Medevacs and Mines, then eventually you get Ghost, Vikings and Liberators. You know, there's steps in that entire process, and usually in games against Protoss, you naturally fall into the next step. You know, like your factory finishes with a reactor. Oh, I can build some mines now. Your starport is done. Okay, build some Medevacs. I see Colossus. Oh, some Vikings. But because you're playing against someone that goes straight into Carriers, the Terran brain needs to realize that something is different, and they can't just follow their default script anymore. You know, where usually you have like these dialogue trees for NPCs sometimes. Usually the dialogue tree for Terran is just one massive branch to the top. It's like, is he Protoss? Yes, open with Marines. Did he build a Stalker? Yes, get a Marauder. Is the game still going on? Yes, build Medevacs. You know, it's like a massive tree trunk that just shoots to the sky. But when the Protoss player decides to go for quick Stargates and Carriers, a second branch pops up And the slow Terran brain has difficulty understanding this. And often the reason why they're losing to carrier build is not so much because the carrier is really powerful, but because Terran is still going up that trunk that they usually go, you know, they're shooting up on that trunk of the tree, and they don't see the branches. They have their eyes closed because they've climbed this tree so many times already. They know where the trunk is because it's right in the middle. And this is why Terran generally is, for brain dead people. All right. We have a barcode here, barcode pros player opening up with Phoenix Colossus start, battery a little bit far in front. Not a huge fan of that. I do like the robo being in the back. I would have loved to see this pylon maybe a bit further forward. I always love having double power for my robotics facility because often it can be very important getting an immortal out. Your forward pylon ends up getting sniped. Having that backup pylon can definitely win you some games. I think this is just, it's barely out of range. I think if you build a little bit further to the back, it might be fine. But well, we're not really looking at the pros here. Well, we are looking at the pros as well, of course, but not quite as much. Teardrop here opened up with a double Cyclone build order. I think he scouted a Stargate and decided, you know what I'm gonna do? I get 2 factory units. These are going to be Cyclones, and I get 1 starport unit. This allows me to get very fast stim and a very fast combat shield and does a quick push, while also simultaneously defending against any potential air threats. And I think this is really freaking, actually quite smart. This is a proper way of playing. You split your Marines in one base, your factory starport units in another base, and then from that point on you start rallying your Marines onto your Cyclone Viking. And you should be safe. You shouldn't take any damage. Another thing here that Teardrop is doing well is building all of the depots in a safe location. Very often you see Terrans just kind of randomly building depots wherever they like. Oh, a bit of vision over here. You can do that before Phoenixes are out, not after they are out. So I love this move. I think this is really freaking smart. I think it's good. I think even some high-level Terrans don't quite do it like this. They're like, oh, let me build a depot over here. And then they lose that SCV 5 times in a row to the 3 Phoenixes that are idling in the dead space. Like, well, wonder if that could have been done any better. Like, yeah. It definitely could have been any better. First Colossus here now on the way. 2 Immortals have already been chronoed out. This Protoss player is doing absolutely nothing, which is just beautiful to see. There's one thing I love is Protoss players just sitting back, relaxing, having a good old time. Now, one thing I will immediately say is that the Phoenix Colossus composition that Protoss plays, and especially the passive Phoenix Colossus, so Phoenix Colossus into carrier and kind of skipping charge, is by far the most brain-dead comp that exists in the Protoss arsenal. Like, there's nothing easier to play than that when it comes to the strategical thinking. It is truly the Terran build of Protoss. You know, you just build Phoenixes and Colossus. There's really no way of going wrong. I love playing this myself because of that particular reason. If you're playing against someone that is worse than you, Phoenix Colossus is a very easy way to make sure that it becomes a standard and boring game, which you then often end up winning. Third base is now up. Thermal lens is on the way, +1 halfway done as well. It's not actually rushing into the second Stargate. We don't even have +1 research yet. Phoenix count honestly isn't all that high. This doesn't really feel like a massive rush into carriers. Oh, another thing that I'm not a huge fan of. What is this? It's protecting I guess the very left side of this. All right. This is god-awful. A thing I'm not really fond of is just the complete lack of turrets altogether. Whenever you move out, you need turrets. Otherwise, it's really easy for Protoss to say, hey, I'm going to kill 7, 8, 9, 10 workers with my Phoenixes. This toss isn't doing it, but this toss could have done it because look at the freaking energy on these Phoenixes. Are going to catch the Viking instead. And there's a Cyclone drop now heading in towards the net as well. Should be capable of at least getting a couple of kills. Phoenix can, of course, lift one of them. Then the rest of the Phoenixes will show up. So it's what, 3-4 kills or so. Same time I hear a scan moving in forward. Gonna try and take out a cannon. Takes out a cannon, loses 6 Marines. That is not a very valuable trade here. Let's follow up with a second Robo. Wait, did I see that correct? Second Robo and a Twilight. This is not quite the carrier rush that I had expected. Also gets a fleet beacon. So he's literally getting every single building at the same time right now. You could say, well, it's broken that TOS can do that. What is Terran supposed to do? You can't even kill them. It's like, well, if you can't kill an opponent that is stacking very heavily, there usually are other advantages that you can establish. And whether that is going to be map control, taking a faster forward base, denying all the vision of your opponent, or setting up for some type of timing attack, all of these things can be very valuable. Just because someone is building a fleet beacon and Twilight Council right now doesn't mean you get to pick up a free win right at that moment. Especially if Your build order doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're playing double starport. They're not producing the entire time because the cash isn't really there. I think we've been lacking some gas. Okay, now we can start them again. You really just waited with producing all together because you couldn't start all 4 at the same time. It's not a very good move, but so far I honestly don't mind the plan so much. Actually, you know what's funny? I actually do mind this plan because with the information that Teardrop has, this plan isn't a very good plan at all. Why would you be playing double starport Vikings against a Protoss that has a Twilight Council, a Forge, single Stargate, and probably more gates? You haven't scanned or scouted the main in quite a long time. Last time you scouted there was when the Stargate still was going up. So with the information that Teardrop has, getting a Ghost Academy would have been much better of a call than getting a second starport. This second starport is a stroke of luck. This is buying 100 lottery tickets and then winning the lottery pretending that you made good financial decisions. No, mate, you got lucky, all right? This is not good. I do not enjoy this. This does not spark joy. Another thing that doesn't spark joy over here, by the way, is the complete lack of map control that Teardrop is just denying. He says, you know what? I know Terran has complete control usually in the mid game, but I'm working on a different plan here, and that's staying home. This is a very odd call, okay? This is basically, okay, imagine you're playing a game of ice hockey. Now, I don't know the rules of ice hockey, but imagine in ice hockey, one of your dudes gets sent off because he beat up the referee or something. All right, and then your team, because you're down a man, decides to just stand in front of the goal together with the goalie to make sure the little hockey puck, the little ball, the round thing, it doesn't go in the goal, okay? As the opposing team, you see that. You're up a man because one got, from the other team got sent out. And then what you do is you do the same thing. You're just standing there in the goal with your goalie, but you're up a man. You're like, well, they're doing it, so why don't we do it as well? Like, yeah, I'm sure they're not going to score against you, but your advantage right now is in your opponent teching up very heavily, investing in this type of stuff. You should have been taking map control much easier or taking many more bases. How is it possible that this Protoss is expanding faster than you are while you are, you're the one in control. Your opponent is stacking up hard. He's getting freaking third Stargate, carriers, mothership in production. I don't quite understand how this is possible. Now you're completely getting pushed back. 6 Vikings have gone down without actually dealing any significant damage. There are 9 Phoenixes. Having some amount of Ghost here would be huge as well. So even though this is not a charge build, I still actually think that going single starport and getting quick Ghost would have been much, much better here. This is an interesting flank as well. Look at this flank. Just look at the timing of this flank, okay? This flank leaves or starts thinking about flanking when it is like a 160 supply to 144, okay? Now, usually when you set up a fight, you want all forces to attack simultaneously. Look what happens here to Mr. Teardrop. He starts fighting with half of his army, then starts moving as he's already lost 20 supply. Doesn't stim this either. There's no medevacs with it. Okay, now stims it. Arrives at the fight after all of the cannon fodder, the SCVs that he's already pulled, end up dying. This is one of the worst time fights that I've seen in my entire life. It is very impressive. In a way, I'm kind of proud. You call up the Guinness Book of World Records and you'll get the world's most botched fight. It is awful. Absolutely butchered it. I'm sorry, I'm gonna... Look at the information here that we have. And then look at this. This is beautiful. This is actually beautiful. Look at this. He forgot that he had... First of all, this is great as well. He just forgot about the fact that he had 8 Vikings idling on the right side. I didn't see them either. But, I mean, I wasn't the one playing. The one thing that we can say is that he doesn't use the F2 hotkey, the all-army hotkey. He comes in with 8 Vikings. Here he looks at the situation. He's like, okay, 3 Stalkers, 1 Immortal, 2 Archons that are fake. He sees that with the turret, by the way. He's aware of it. And 1 Adept. So there's 3 Marauders on the floor. This Immortal's practically dead. I wonder what the best use of those 8 air fighters would be while being covered by a turret at the same time. And here he decides, my man decides to land all Vikings so he can start shooting at the Immortal and the Stalkers. while simultaneously giving these Phoenixes still the ability just to fight, because you're just picking up Phoenixes, disabling them. You're denying your own damage output because now you're getting lifted by Phoenixes, which is not possible with air units. And you're losing an air fight that should have been an easy win. So rather than clearing the Phoenixes, and then with reinforcements and a quick Viking land clearing the ground, you now lost all of your Vikings. The Phoenixes stay alive, and yeah, you did clear the ground, but that would have happened anyway. That was 2 decisions in a row there. They were so god-awful that perhaps you are a fake Grandmaster after all. No, just kidding. You're a Grandmaster, buddy. I believe in you. I truly do believe in you. Mothership is about to pop out over here as these 2 mines also go down, finally. Did deal some damage, though. Overall, the situation, how do we view this, all right? So you're down about 8 workers. You have a worse army. You have similar upgrades to your opponent, except he is starting +2 already. You're not continuing upgrade for your Vikings. Adding in barracks. I love that your analysis of the situation here is like, you know what? My opponent, at this point, I think you're aware that he's messing air units. You probably are aware as well that, like, you could have seen that he had +1. So it's like, okay, maybe there's going to be carriers of some sort. And you saw the anti-impulse crystal, so you know there's a fleet beacon. And you add 3 barracks as your priority, while you're not producing from any of your 5 barracks. This was not the priority, all right? Your priority here should have been getting a 5th base, getting your army out on the map, because the moment your opponent moves out, you want to be capable of base trading, spreading mines around the map for map vision. These are all the things you want to be doing right now. You're doing none of that. Instead, you invested in 3 barracks. These barracks hadn't produced anything. Really, the only thing you need to be thinking about is getting upgrades for your Vikings when it comes to unit production, and getting more Vikings. Getting a couple of ghosts in there as well would probably be a very good call. Now, Cloak is being researched. I do like that. I don't even really mind the upgrades on the bio, because you probably still want to have some type of bio army. You want to have some ghosts at least. They, of course, benefit from those upgrades as well. So I don't entirely mind that. I'm not so sure if it had priority over taking extra bases, though. And these 3 extra barracks are definitely a waste in my mind. Second armory is not here. And one of the things that people forget is that carriers have very many small attacks. Like, they have a lot of DPS, 1 carrier, because they send out freaking 8 interceptors. But all these interceptors fire individually, and thus armor counts multiple times, basically, against 1 carrier. So, yes, Viking ship weapons is huge, because Vikings also shoot multiple times. But having freaking Viking armor against carrier, that is an extremely big deal. And your opponent is aware of the fact that armor is pretty good to have. Of course, he's not getting... Well, he's actually getting the shields, which is usually useless, because EMP is always going to blanket your army. But so far, you haven't built a ghost, so I kind of understand why your opponent is actually getting the shield upgrade, which makes me sad to say. Protoss has legitimately 0 vision on the map, but honestly, he's not really allowed to have vision on the map, unless it's with observers. You also have 0 vision on the map. You're not really allowed not to have vision on the map. You have to have vision on the map. When you're playing against this army, one of the main strategies that you employ against a very big, clumpy army is the base trade strategy. The moment you are not ready yet, what you want to do, this is the same literally against everything. It's the same against mech, it's the same against camping Protoss players. I guess it's the same against like some type of Brute Lord push, if Zerg goes for that. If you're not ready to deal with the army, you base trade. Okay, that is what you do. Hello, recall. Hello. Okay, snipes the first mothership. An interesting fight that honestly didn't start so poor, but I don't think you ever should have taken it, in my mind. Now, the reason why you shouldn't have taken it, I'm going to explain. I was in the middle of a story anyway. If we take a look at the situation right now, it is completely unrealistic for your opponent to ever move out on the map. Okay, the moment he moves out on the map, you have a massive army that can immediately base trade. You can clear through cannons really quickly. That's no problem. On top of that, you're producing 2 extra command centers. You're getting your upgrades. You're nowhere close near finishing all of your upgrades, while your opponent is pretty much maxed out in power right now. He's maxed on 187 supply, has good upgrades. Like, he is not going to increase much in power. You can still increase in power, and more, you can also increase in production. So the moment you take a fight at your opponent's base and you have very good eco and very good production, you can instantly reproduce all of your units, which is a huge deal if you're fighting against a better army. And if you say, well, what if he moves out across the map? Very easy, you just go for a base trade. This move was good, but you should have ran away. You really should have. And now, well, you just get caught. And you make it very difficult for yourself because it makes it harder for you to take more eco, to get extra starports out because you're so focused on producing right now in this moment. Now, of course, you also clear a lot of units out of your opponent. But at the same time, if he was capable of moving across the map with a single observer here, which he actually is, I think you probably would just straight up die. There are 10 Phoenixes and 4 carriers. There's still a Colossus as well. It's going to be hard for you at least to establish new outside bases. I don't actually think this is viable whatsoever. And that means that you're even in economy against a player that has literally been turtling the entire time. Now, you've also been turtling the entire time, but you shouldn't have. So there definitely is a difference there. He had to, you didn't have to. You just did it because you're slow or because you didn't know what to do. I like this nuke. This is good. Nukes always cause chaos. So we can just take a look at the first person here of this project. What the heck is happening here? You heard the nuke sound. You know, it's playing some banging hard style music during this. Doom, doom, doom. It's like a nuclear missile has been launched. Like, oh no. Yeah. Didn't pull stuff away, not in time at least. But now he does feel confident enough to be out on the map, which is bad. This is actually quite bad. This is real freaking bad, actually. If the Protoss has confidence to be out on the map with an Airtos army, you're usually going to be in trouble. You're now adding your 3rd starport. At this point, honestly, you should be on freaking 8 bases. You should have 5 starports with reactors, all of them out there. You should have the ship weapons level 3 upgrade, +2 ship armor as well. The fact that you don't have any of that just shows that you have a weak economical position. You're struggling maxing out on top of that as well. Like, this is just painful. This move I really like. Splitting off the Bioforce from your Viking Ghost Force, saying, hey, this is my counterattack army. Probably do want to have 1 or 2 ghosts in this army in general. Okay, we get a big scan forward. I like that. Making sure that there's nothing there. Also making sure that there's nothing on the far left side. And then going for a rotation. I still believe that having a mine at every exit would be very nice because it allows you to get some information on whether your opponent is moving out or not. This is another good scan. Seeing, hey, getting that confirmation as to what your opponent is doing. Recall is once more available, but if you force out the recall, that would be huge. One more scan over here. Yes, perfect. Very nice rotation. I think, well, it's a little bit confusing. Okay, I'm just gonna go back in time once more. A perfect scan to gather information that then doesn't get used. Like, we get the info that the main army is still about, what, 8-9 seconds away. You could definitely take out this base. Or at least send forward 5 Marines to clear a bunch of these guys. I think I would have just cleared the base. I definitely would have cleared the base. Then moving back home entirely. Should be out on the map. Yep, there we go. Stay out on the map. And a thing that should be happening right now, but isn't really, is while you're continuously base trading, is you should make your base defenses stronger. So you should have better eco and then add turrets at bases so that Viking Ghost plus turret can either delay or win fights. And most of the time, if you have like 20 turrets with freaking turret range and building armor, you're actually going to be fine against this type of composition. And you can use a base trade with your bio army while defending with the Ghost Viking and continuously expanding. It becomes really difficult for Protoss to ever truly move out because they're always dealing with stuff. And if they go for a desperation all-out attack, there's so much static defense that they feel super all in. And you have a lot of time to reproduce units if you lose some. It's just, this is exactly how you'd want to be playing. Like, I'm giving you the freaking, you know, the timetable on what to do at what timing. And so far, you're semi-doing it sometimes. Okay, got a scan here on this observer. I like that. Another scan a bit further towards the top. I'd love to see another scan over here. So important. Really freaking important. I also wouldn't mind having a secondary army just moving towards the right side, because this guy moves in massive clumps the entire time. You should be capable of kind of, you know, seeing that that's the case. And Protoss will do this majority of the time because a split Airtos army is hot garbage. So you often rely heavily on static defense. Very heavily. So now we're getting these turret setups. But it's slightly too late, and also, well, just 25 Vikings and 10 Ghosts right now are on the far right side of the map. Okay? 25 Vikings and 10 Ghosts. That means you have 22 Marines and 9 Marauders in this army. You have no static defense whatsoever. Your opponent has a higher tech army, which also you can assume is much higher in supply due to them having A, lower worker count, and B, having their entire freaking army together. This has to be the worst decision after seeing what you're fighting against. Like, how is your guesstimation of this fight? I think I might take it. It's like, you see 12 carriers. You see 4 Colossus. Like, if this army just consisted of the Colossus and the Phoenixes, you still would lose. If this army consisted of the Phoenix and the carriers, you still would lose. If this army consisted of the final combination that I've now forgotten, you also still would lose. You lose like with like 30 supply missing in this army, with 40 supply out of this army, you'd still get absolutely destroyed. And it's not even going to be close, even in those cases. Like, with this level of estimation, I'm just happy that in your free time you don't have base jumping or parkour as a hobby, because I don't think you would last very long. Holy crap. Ghost here, nuke is good. Like, all of this was actually kind of good. You kind of got online here as well. It's like you were making some semi-correct moves. Like, the decision-making was getting better, but then you take such a god-awful fight. Here you should be counter-attacking for base trading while simultaneously building 30 turrets over here, saying, hey, I'm gonna give up this base for now. I'm gonna counter-attack with my Bioforce, either force my opponent completely all in and thus incapable of reproducing, or they have to go back home, and then I can just set up again. This is obviously a terrible fight, because there's no static defense backup. You're not maxed out while your opponent is, and your opponent has better eco, and better upgrades. So your opponent had a better, bigger army that was completely ready to deal whatever you had. Now you're forced to tap out. Like, you can undo all of this by just adding in more static. How do I even beat that comp? Like, this is an insult. Like, this is the kid... This is the kid that gets a difficult mathematical question and doesn't even think about it and just instantly goes up to the teacher. Like, I have no clue how to do this. It's like, oh, have you thought about it yet? No, I haven't thought about it, but I also have no clue about it. It's like, well, how about you think about it a little bit, mate? Like, was there anything in this entire game that perhaps you could have done different? I don't think even this composition was necessarily the issue. Sure, like, Phoenix, Carrier, Colossus is a very good composition that's easy to execute, difficult to fight against. But you were fighting, every single time you fought a serious fight, you fought either with half of your army, or you fought with a serious supply deficit or a serious upgrade deficit. You didn't even make a serious attempt over here. The entire time you're just behind, you have low eco, your production is 3 starports against 4 stargates, so your production is legitimately worse, which should never happen against a turtling player. It's not possible that this is the case. How is it possible that the main unit you want to be building, the Viking, A, only has weapons upgrades, and B, you only have 3 production structures for it? That doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Like, your eco and production should be so much better if you're playing against a turtly army. That is just the case. You should be employing base trade tactics way more. And if you are a true Grandmaster player, my friend, you would know all of these things. And now you do, and thus you can call yourself a true GM. But sadly, it also means that in this particular game, composition wasn't undefeatable or imbalanced, but you just sucked. And that's the way it is. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this episode of Is the Imba or Do I Suck? If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.